Good morning and welcome to another day on the Appalachian Trail. Today is Tuesday, May 21st, and it's day 19 of our hike. And I've been hiking, I think, a little over 4 miles, maybe close to 5 miles, since departing the shelter that I stayed at last night, Cosby Knob shelter. And I left the shelter about 7:40 a.m. I think. It's a little later than I was expecting to. I was hoping to get on trail by 7 a.m. But I believe I'm still on target to make it to Davenport Gap by noon, which is my scheduled pickup time to get Riley. So I'm feeling good about that. After leaving the shelter, I had some uphill to do, which I took nice and slow. And now I am on the long descent, long descent, exiting Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Once I get to Davenport Gap, that's the northern end of the AT in the Smokies. So I'm very close to being out of the Smokies. That is an accomplishment. Got a sign here. Lower Mount Camera Trail. That way. Davenport Gap, 2.9 miles. All right. Cool. So as long as it's 10:30, not too far past 10:30, I should still be on track to get to Davenport Gap by noon, assuming I am able to do a pace of approximately 2 miles an hour, which is a good rule of thumb. And I feel like the trail right now, it's actually very pleasant. Earlier on today, it was there were some rocky and rooty structures, but I feel like as we get closer and closer to the northern boundary at Davenport Gap, I don't think it's likely that the trail's going to get significantly harder for any super long stretch. So I still feel good about getting there by noon. I'm also feeling more awake now. It took me a while this morning to really wake up, and I felt like I was walking using only like 1/10 of my brain power, and all I was focusing on was looking at the ground, trying to make good movements with my feet and my legs, trying to make sure I land on a secure spot. Wasn't bothering with looking up at the scenery or looking up at the trees or checking my phone. Just very single focused on walking forward at a comfortable pace without falling. And I'm kind of still doing that, but now I have my phone out, so it's even having the phone out when I'm walking, it takes extra energy. So I generally try to get my phone out only when I'm on a pretty comfortable stretch of trail or when I'm feeling very alert and active. So last night at the shelter, as I said in yesterday's video, it was a full house. Plus there were lots of people that were tenting. And somehow, by my stroke of luck, there was one spot open in the shelter, so I didn't have to spend time setting up my tent and taking it down this morning. So that helped me get set up quicker last night and get going a little quicker this morning. a lot of shelters in the Smokies have a bunch of tarps that are secured to the front of the shelter with the idea or the goal that it keeps out any drafts from entering the shelter and helps to keep people warm. Not all of the shelters in the Smokies have that, but two of the shelters that I stayed at, the one last night and also I believe the first one, Molly's Ridge Shelter, both had tarps covering pretty much the entire front area, which I really like, because the shelters in the Smokies are some of the highest elevation shelters on the entire trail, and so it tends to get very cold at night in these shelters, and the presence of the tarps in front of the shelters makes a huge difference in helping to keep people warm and stay comfortable. I remember when my previous two hikes on the AT, where I also hiked through the Smokies, I remember being very cold, uncomfortably cold. For my first hike, I only had like a synthetic sleeping bag. It was the very first sleeping bag that I tried out, and it wasn't warm enough. And I think I had several shirts with me that I was able to try to put on to keep warm, but I was still really, really cold. And I did not have my puffy jacket at that point. And then the second year, in 2018, I did have a much better sleeping bag, but I still didn't have my puffy, and I still remember being pretty cold at night. But this year, I've done much better with keeping warm. So I have the same sleeping bag that I had in 2018, which is still pretty effective. But I also now, or since 2018, I acquired a sleeping bag liner, which I get into before I get inside my sleeping bag. It's extremely lightweight. It's made of silk, and does a very good job of adding a good layer of warmth. It's actually closed at the toe end, so it helps to block drafts from getting inside the toe end, and it's long enough where I can wrap it around over my head as well, so I can use it to block drafts coming from both ends. So that, along with the sleeping bag, is a definite improvement. Plus I have my puffy jacket that I have since acquired, and that does a great job of keeping my upper body warm. And there were still a few nights where I felt a little chilly, but nowhere near the cold that I was feeling in the first 2 years back in 2017 and 2018. So that's progress. Definitely pleased about that. There's another mushroom down there. Day is warming up. It started off cool because I left relatively early, but it's definitely doesn't feel chilly anymore. And also we're descending elevation quite a bit, so that definitely makes a difference. And I think the temperatures generally goes up as you get lower elevation. I said last night that I was looking forward to doing some reading before I got to bed, but once I got all my chores done, which took a while, I gave my teeth a good brushing last night before getting into bed, so that took a while. And then once I finally got in my sleeping bag, I wasn't so tired that I couldn't start reading, but I just kind of laid and relaxed before deciding to pull my Kindle out, or actually turn it on. And I kind of just ended up dozing off. I was just that tired, so I didn't get any reading done last night. And that's okay. I do enjoy the reading, but I also am thankful for getting whatever rest I'm able to get at night. So since I'm feeling good here, trail is pretty easy. I might as well describe a little bit about the book that I'm reading. So I mentioned one book that I've started, which is the mushroom book. I've only kind of scratched the surface of that. I'm kind of just reading that. All right, I'm back here, continuing to get close to Davenport Gap. I now have less than a mile to go. I stopped the video short earlier because there was a hiker coming up behind me, and there were actually two hikers, one in front of the other, separated by a little distance. Earlier, like about 2.8 miles after leaving the shelter, there was like a little fork in the trail where the AT continued to the right, and it started descending, but to the left there was a 0.6 mile trail that led to something called Mount Camerer, where there is apparently a lookout type structure, and it's a popular place to visit. I decided not to go there because it was a little far and it was uphill. But the other two guys that were behind me, they had passed me earlier, but they both left their packs at the I guess at the fork in the trail and hiked up without their packs to look at it. So that's how I got ahead of them. And they both said it was a pretty cool spot. Apparently the structure is like a kind of a six-sided structure made of stone, I think. So I am going to put that on my list of things to check out on YouTube when I get a chance, because I've on my 3 hikes through the Smoky so far, I've never decided to hike up there, which I'm fine with. I don't regret it at all, but it'll still be cool to see it on YouTube. And if anyone's watching this and you're interested to see Mount Camerer, it might be cool to check out. And then as they caught up to me, I actually felt a kind of a little surge of energy, so I was able to keep pace with them for a little while and have some conversations, and that helped me to speed up the hike a little bit. So I'm definitely, I don't know what time it is now, but I'm very sure that it's before 12 o'clock, and I'm gonna get to Davenport Gap before noon. So either I'll see Riley there if the person who's dropping him off decided to come early, or I'll have a little time to relax while I'm waiting until he shows up. Anyway, so I was last describing the books that I was reading. So I was saying I was, one of the books is the mushroom book, which I'm kind of just using as a reference. I mean, I am trying to read it forward to back, but I'm not so interested in it that I'm choosing to read that exclusively. And so as a result, I'm only at the beginning, and I'll continue with it as I feel like. But then the other book that I am currently reading, it's not everyone's cup of tea, I think, as far as pleasure books to read. So I'll just describe it loosely, I guess. It's a true crime book, but it's related to hiking. and it's about a crime that occurred in Shenandoah National Park back in 1996 that resulted in 2 female hikers that were vacationing in the park. They were unfortunately they were murdered while they were camped at a remote tent site. And to date, the case has not been, there's been no official charges or no official conviction in the case. So it's still an open case. And apparently back in 1996, the case made headlines in the news, and it was a topic in the national news as well. But I was alive back then. I was in high school, and I don't remember hearing about it back then. I only heard about it more recently after I became more interested in hiking as an activity that I like to do. And the way that I heard about the book is there's this podcast called the Backpacking Podcast with Juliana Chauncey and Zach Davis. They interview usually hikers who talk about their trail experiences, but they also interview other people. And one of the people they interviewed was the author of this book a while back, and I had a chance to listen to it. And it was an interesting interview, and it made me interested to read the book. And I saw that it was available for checkout in the Kindle library, so I decided to bring it along with me on trail. And so far I'm finding it very interesting. The author has described a lot of the history of the 2 women, and she's also detailing like a lot about the investigatory process that was followed by the National Park Service and the FBI. And she talks a lot about how she focuses a lot on the key differences that exist between solving crimes that are in cities or suburban areas, like places where most people live, versus crimes that occur in the wilderness. And she talks a lot about how much more difficult it is to actually research and solve crimes that are in the wilderness, because there's, number one, there's fewer people, so there's fewer witnesses, and any evidence at the scene of the crime is much more likely to be contaminated or not exist anymore just because of weather factors, or you can't really be sure what else has come into contact with the scene between the time that a crime occurred and the time that investigators are able to lock the area down. And because it's an unsolved case, it's also it's still a mystery as to who is responsible. And so I'm curious to read that part of the book and learn about the different suspects. And I believe the author has done a lot of research and has some interesting ideas about possible suspects that could still be looked into. It's still an open case, but it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of forward progress for many, many years. Anyway, so that's something that is keeping my interest at night when I'm reading. She talks a lot about hikers as well, and the trail community and the Appalachian Trail community. And like one of the themes she's touched on so far is how the hikers at the time who were hiking in the area, as well as many park goers who were like not through hiking the Appalachian Trail but were visiting Shenandoah National Park during the time that the crime occurred. So far she's talked a lot about how there was a lack of communication by people in Shenandoah National Park, and as a result a lot of hikers and a lot of visitors to the park felt like they were being misled and felt like they were being put at risk because they weren't really informed about many details of the incident, and they weren't told to evacuate the area. They were just kind of hearing things via rumors almost, and it led to a pretty scary situation for many people. So that one of the things she's focused on so far is that aspect of just from like a communication standpoint and a public relations standpoint, how I guess poor of a job was done and the impact that it had on many others who were local to the area at the time. So I'm about a third of the way through the book. I finished. The book is organized into chapters, but then various chapters are organized into parts. So I'm through part 1 of the book, and I think that covers about the first third of the book. So I'm definitely curious to find out what else she has to say. And I find that the book seems pretty well written and well researched. So yeah, just wanted to mention that's what's keeping my attention at night, when I have enough energy to actually read before I go to sleep. And also, it's not like spooking me out. It's not something that I feel scared about, in terms of like reading about a crime that occurred in the wilderness. As far as myself, I feel very safe out here. I'm pretty experienced with just having been out here for many nights, so I'm able to read it without being scared, which is good. So we're getting closer and closer to Davenport Gap, so I'm gonna turn the phone off here, and once Riley comes into the picture, I will try to capture his reaction to seeing me. Hopefully he's excited. All right, bye for now. Just wanted to check in once more. I realized I didn't mention the title of the book that I was just describing. So the title is called Trailed, and the names of the 2 women who are the focus of the book are Julie Williams and Lolly Winans. So I just wanted to give that additional detail. All right, back again. So this means we are at the northern end of the AT in the Smokies. This right here, this box was also at the southern end, but if you're entering from the northern end, you are like anyone who's hiking the AT needs to purchase a backcountry permit for $40 from the park, and that allows you to hike through the park and also stay at the shelters. And the permit that you buy, it's like a 2-sided form, and you're supposed to take one part of the form and deposit it in that box when you enter the park, and then you keep the other one with you so that if a ranger stops and asks you to show proof that you purchased the permit, you can show them. So this is Davenport Gap here. And the trail continues up the steps that way. And Newfound Gap, 31.4 miles. And here's a sign about the lost dog named Sadie, who was owned by Bright Eyes. And I met Bright Eyes on the trail before entering the Smokies. So they still have signs up. It was last seen on the trail on March 18th, and today is May 21st. And between Walnut Mountain and Shelter and Lemon Gap, mile 260.9. Currently we're at about mile 237, so a little bit north of here. Okay. Doesn't look like Riley's here. Although, anyway, we'll see what this car is doing up here. Hello, Riley. Riley is back. All right, so Riley has been back for a while now. We're still at Davenport Gap. And I was working quite a lot to fit all this stuff in my backpack. The lady from the kennel dropped off all of Riley's things, and now my pack is much heavier. But Riley's here, so that's great. I accidentally spilled some rice on the ground. I'm going to leave that there because it's too hard to pick up, and it's just rice. And we're on the side of the road. It'll be fine. And now we need to hike 3 miles to get to Standing Bear Farm. And I think I'm going to ask them if they can possibly mail the food that I sent them like to a forwarding address and see how much that costs. Because I have no room in my pack to fit anything else. And my pack feels like it's 100 pounds now. Not just the weight, but it's just not sitting well on me. So this is another reason to get rid of my bear canister and get an earth sack, which hopefully I can do when we get to Hot Springs. And it's really hot here too. We're down at like 1,700 feet now, as opposed to being up at 4,000. So Riley's ready to go, and we're just gonna try to survive out here, one step at a time. All right, check back in later. All right, so my pack is still very uncomfortable, but we're making progress. We are, I think, pretty close to the road where Standing Bear Farm is, where we need to check in and see what's up with Riley's food. But there's a really cool waterfall in front of us. I'm gonna take it really slow down here and hope that Riley stays behind me like I want him to. And we'll get a look at this waterfall. Stay there, Riley. Very nice, beautiful. Very nice. Riley, hold up, Riley. Arr! Arr! I growl at Riley sometimes when I am displeased. So, yep, waterfall up there, waterfall going down there. All right, I'm gonna put this away while we cross. All right, so I made it to Standing Bear Farm. Riley and I made it, and we're relaxing in the kitchen area. And the owner of the place offered to trade me the dog food that I had sent for $18 worth of resupply items from their food store. And so I was able to pick out a bunch of stuff that I'm eating now. So I got like 2 cans of chickpeas, some baked beans, some carrots, tomatoes, corn, which I haven't started yet, a fruit cup. This is trash here. And then I got some stuff to take with me. I got 3 bags of these Takis chips, and I got some quinoa, and 3 bags of ramen, and a bag of cashews. So I'm excited to eat through all this stuff, and Riley and I are gonna hike out this evening and find a campsite. So things are working out. I'm excited and very thankful to have some excellent food to eat before we continue on the hike and get to hot springs, hopefully by Thursday. So bye for now.